welcome everyone. Welcome to the Law Career Fair. And really excited. So my name's Grant. I'm from Prosper. We're the host and providing the technology for this virtual career fair. So welcome to you all today. We're really excited by this panel session. So we're going to be covering off international opportunities. And I've got a bit of a star-studded panel online today, which I'll get to in a moment. But before we kick things off, I'd just like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we meet today. I'd also like to pay my respects to the elders past, present, and emerging. And finally, I'd like to extend a really big thank you to today's sponsor of the event, which is the College of Law, who have made this possible. So, as I mentioned, everyone, my name's Grant from Prosper, and I'm joined today by Will and Nishila at Allen Overy Hong Kong, Edward Freeman at Freshfields, Donovan Ferguson at Kingwood Mallesons, and also Helen Axon at Kingwood Mallesons Hong Kong as well. So hello everyone, welcome. Before we go into questions and getting everyone to introduce, getting the panel to introduce themselves and what role they're working at in the firm and tell them a little bit, the audience a bit about themselves. I'd just like to highlight, so this session will run for about 30 minutes, so right up until about 2:30 Australian time, and then we'll run into the virtual career fair booths as well, which you can actually meet these employers online as well. And so if any questions aren't answered today, feel free to jump into those booths once the session is finished. But I do encourage you all. I've got a few questions that I'll go through initially, but feel free to utilise the chat box as well and fire in any questions there, and we'll try and spare sort of 10 to 15 minutes at the end of this session to answer your questions. So I might kick things off with Will, if you'd like to quickly introduce yourself.
Thanks, Grant. Hi, everyone. My name's Will McAuliffe. I'm the head of the corporate team in our Hong Kong office. And I guess just by way of a little bit of background, I started my career with one of the large Australian firms working in Australia. I joined Allen Overy in London as a junior associate and had a couple of years in London before being sent out as an associate on what we call a firefighting role, working on a particular transaction in Hong Kong for what was meant to be 1 year. And here I am 20-something years later. So it goes to show that Hong Kong's a fantastic place to live and work as a lawyer. And I've spent time in our Beijing office as well during my time out here in Greater China.
Amazing. Well, welcome. And Nishila, do you want to introduce yourself as well?
Sure. So I look after graduate recruitment and trainee development here for Allen Overy in Hong Kong. I've been with the firm now for a couple of years, so I will be joining the session after this one with, I guess, our trainees. So if anyone has any other questions, please feel free to come and join us at that.
Amazing. Welcome. Thanks, Allen Overy. And I might get Edward Freeman to introduce yourself.
Thanks, Grant. My name's Ed Freeman. I'm a partner based in the Hong Kong office at Freshfields. My practice area is around all sorts of M&A and corporate work, covering sort of a lot of private equity work, as well as more sort of corporate cross-border work around Asia and back to Europe and the US. Not totally dissimilar to Will, actually. I started life I've been with I'm a Freshfields lifer, so I'm fully institutionalized, but I started in the London office as a trainee. I did spend 6 months in Hong Kong on a trainee secondment, so I have just about can remember what it was like being here as a trainee solicitor, and it was a lot of fun, I can assure you. And then I went back to London, and I spent several years in our London office before coming back to Hong Kong in 2008. And like Will, I was due to be here for about 18 months on a secondment arrangement, which we do quite frequently. And I've never looked back, really. So 12 and a half years later, I'm I'm still here, and I became a partner here about 10 years ago. So that's my history with the firm.
Amazing. Thanks for jumping on, Ed. And I might try and get, I think Priscilla's very quickly joining us as well, Possible Blue 31. Priscilla, can you hear us?
Yep.
You just
Hi.
There you go.
Hi, I'm Priscilla. Sorry for joining slightly late. I'm Priscilla from Freshfields. I'm the graduate recruitment manager in Hong Kong. So I work together with Ed looking after training contracts and internship for Freshfields Hong Kong. So nice meeting you all virtually.
Amazing. Thanks for jumping on. And last but certainly not least, Donovan and Helen at KW or King William Mallesons, Hong Kong. Hi, both of you. Welcome. Who would like to go first and introduce themselves to the audience and share a little bit about your role?
Hi everyone, thanks Grant. My name's Don Ferguson. I'm a partner in the DR team in Hong Kong. I'm also the graduate recruitment partner along with Jessica Zhao, who you'll be meeting in a little while. So it's really great to get the chance to come and speak to you all, because this is one of the most fun parts of my role. Background, I'm an Aussie. I started out with Mallesons Stephen Jakes in Brisbane in 2003. We were a bit sick of staying in Australia. We wanted to go and explore. We'd never been to Hong Kong, but I lied in my interview and managed to score a transfer up here. That was in 2006, and since then I've never left. So similar stories to Will and Ed. Hong Kong's a great place, and I hope that you guys feel that after speaking to the to the six of us during this session.
And I'm Helen. I run the graduate recruitment at King William Mallesons. Unfortunately, we can't be in Australia as we traditionally like to be, but hopefully you can get as much information out of this session as you would if we had met you in person. Amazing.
Thanks for dialing in, team. So as I said, a very quick reminder as well to all the students. I can see there's a lot of you online. Please feel free to utilize the chat box and enter any or start asking some questions in there, and I can start sort of monitoring that chat box and asking the questions to the panel. But I've got a few that I've drawn up initially. So for the first one, I might actually hand to Will to start off with. Will, if I can ask you, what's the most important piece of advice that you would give to students wanting to work for a law firm in Hong Kong?
I would say keep an open mind as to what area of law you want to specialise in. There's a rich array of specialist areas within law, and I know when I was a student at law school, I was convinced that I wanted to be a litigator, and upon working for a couple of years in a law firm and similar to a traineeship where you get rotated around departments, I came to a completely different view as to the area I wanted to specialise in going forward, which was M&A and corporate, which is what I do today. So don't have preconceived ideas as to the areas you really want to focus on. Keep a really open mind, because you never really know what you're going to enjoy doing for the rest of your career until you really get a taste of it working inside a law firm. And never be afraid to ask questions. The old adage that there's no such thing as a stupid question plays very true in this profession. So we more senior lawyers really appreciate inquisitive, newly qualified and junior lawyers that are always stretching their own horizons and are really pushing and trying to learn as much as possible. So never be afraid to ask questions and really make the most of your opportunity in this profession.
Amazing. Thanks for sharing. Great advice. Fantastic advice. Ed, anything to add to that? Any tips as to like important pieces of advice that you give to students wanting to work at your firm?
I mean, I'd certainly echo what Will has said. I think also just in terms of the sort of all the great things about Hong Kong is the diversity and array of clients that you'll have the opportunity to interact with. So, obviously China's an important part of the puzzle really for Hong Kong, but it's also a lot of international work that happens from Hong Kong. Hong Kong is something of a hub for many other Asian jurisdictions. So, I think that's the other side of it. Sometimes, people get a bit fixated on, well, I have to be kind of a fluent Chinese speaker, and those sorts of things certainly help, but it's not just about that. I think sort of embracing all the different types of clients and being sort of culturally open-minded and aware as well. I think Hong Kong, unlike almost any other jurisdiction, is really important. It's a wonderful experience actually to sort of travel around Asia and work with clients and other colleagues and other professionals all around the region and learn a bit about them and their culture and how they do deals, and there's kind of nuances and differences, and that's one of the real joys I think of working in Hong Kong, and one of the things I've enjoyed the most, probably as compared with sort of London, which is a wonderful deep old market, but probably slightly more one-dimensional in some senses on that front at least. So I would absolutely encourage people to enjoy that and embrace the region for all its diversity.
Fantastic, thanks for sharing. Don, do you have anything to add to Will or Ed's sentiments or thoughts?
My one tip would be, tell us why you want to come to Asia, why you want to live and work in this jurisdiction, because that's the big thing. You see hundreds of CVs and applications across our desk, and the real important thing, both in getting a position at any of our firms, but then also thriving here, is really knowing why you want to live and work here.
Awesome advice. Find out your why. That's great advice. So, and please, I do encourage, I can see there's a few students are starting to punch questions in the chat, so keep on doing that. We'll definitely get to them in the next 5 or so minutes. If I can go back to you, Ed, around what your organisation is actually looking for in an application and what students actually need to show in order to progress the next round of recruitment. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, for sure. Look, I mean, I think there's a sort of there's an expectation on terms of academics, and we do absolutely want sort of bright, talented people, of course, and it probably goes without saying. I think though the thing that really sort of sets people apart and more, this business is as much about understanding people and being able to engage and converse with people as it is about real technical strength. There is obviously a sort of technical legal aspect to the job, but I think what makes people stand out is that ability to communicate with other people and to understand and be responsive to what to the particular needs of other people, i.e. clients and colleagues that you're going to engage with. So I really like to see that. I like to see genuine sort of commercial curiosity. It's easy to say that you're kind of interested in all things commercial when you're applying to a big kind of corporate commercial law firm for a job, but you have to actually be able to back that up with what can you tell me about what's going on in the commercial world at the moment, and so I think just informing yourself about that and genuinely having that sort of curious mind about all matters commercial as well. So those two aspects, I think I would say are things that will make people stand out from the crowd.
Amazing. And Will, one for you, for students who land a job with the firm, with Allen Overy, what type of advice would you give to students, let's wind the clock forward 6 months or a year when they start the position, what type of advice would you give them to help them survive and even thrive in that first year of working in Hong Kong and getting adapted with the local environment and working at the firm?
Yeah, a great question, Ed. I mean, I think one of the biggest pitfalls for trainees in their first year or two is to take too much on. So there can be trainees can feel there's pressure to say yes to everything that comes their way, and that is a major pitfall, because what that results in is people taking too much on and then either missing deadlines or hurriedly preparing a piece of work and presenting something that is substandard, or even worse, both, dishing up something that's substandard and is after the deadline. Now, I say that, but I think, I'm sure that Ed, Donovan, and I can all admit to having fallen into that trap at some stage during our careers, particularly as junior lawyers, because it does happen to everyone. But really managing your workload and never be afraid to say that you've got too much on your plate. So someone comes in and wants to give you a piece of work, get you involved in something. If you are overloaded, speak up and say so, because that's going to make sure that the work is then allocated to someone who can deliver and has got the time and the capacity to deliver quality work within the time frame. And also it means that that our junior lawyers are not coming under too much strain, and they're managing their own workloads as well. So, if I had to give one tip, Grant, that would be it. And it is, I think, the most common pitfall for trainees and junior lawyers.
Interesting. Donovan, anything to add there on that front?
So my tip would be, and I think Will touched on this earlier, I'd say keep your options open. Your first 2 years at any law firm is your chance to decide what you want to do forever. And I promise you, what you do at any of our firms compared to what you've learnt at university or what you think law might be like is completely different. So you'll get, rotations through the DR, the banking, the corporate team. You'll probably get an international secondment. Your first 2 years is the opportunity to tell everyone you love them and that you're considering coming back to their group, but out all the different kinds of work and work out what you actually want to be doing for the next 20 or 30 years. So no decisions early is my tip.
Great tip. Ed, anything else to add on that front?
Yeah, I think just, I completely agree with the comments that have been made. I think I would add to it that sometimes it can be quite an intimidating thing. Clearly, when you start and you're sort of the newly through the door, and it might be your first time spending time in a sort of office environment, or even from home in a virtual environment these days. But I think trying to sort of having the confidence to speak up. You're hired, and you've been hired for the job because you are smart, you have something to contribute. Yes, you've got a lot to learn, and you don't have the experience perhaps that other team members might have, but we absolutely want to hear your opinions and your input. So I think kind of quickly getting the idea that you're kind of an important part of the team, and not just there to sort of be passive and responsive to what you're being told to do is important, and that tends to help people stand out as well. I think we want sort of proactive, confident individuals working in our organisation, and as I say, you wouldn't have been hired if you didn't have something to share. So getting that sort of mindset right from the outset, I think will stand you in good stead.
Most definitely. Thanks for sharing. So I might turn my attention to the chat box, because I can see there's a few questions piling in. So thank you for that. Molly, I think you were the first one off the bat. So first in best dressed, we'll go with that policy. So Molly asks, I'm graduating this year and I would love to work in Hong Kong next year. Is that possible? And then the second part of the question is, would I have to finish my PLT in Sydney and then get admitted and then go over? Who would like to take this one?
I think I can. If you're graduating from Australia this year, you need to understand the Hong Kong training contract process. So as an Australian graduate, you would need to look into the PCL program, as well as doing your conversion exams before getting a training contract in Hong Kong. If you go down the PLT routes, and getting your Australian admissions, I think you would probably want to get a couple of years of experience under your belt before coming across to Hong Kong. So that would be advice. There are a couple of schools on the PCL program that are joining the booths later, so you can find out more about that there.
Great, thanks, Helen. Any other additions or thoughts, Priscilla or Nishila?
No, I think Helen has covered that, I guess, what the person's asked really well.
Same here.
Amazing. Thank you. So Tommy in the chat, thanks, Tommy. He asks, how helpful is it having a finance background for a career as a transactional lawyer? Who wants to put their hand up and have a go at that one?
I don't mind having a go at that one. I mean, I think the more, I mean, I mentioned earlier, sort of having commercial sense, I guess, depending a little bit on where you decide you want to specialise. But I think across a lot of the work that the firms that are represented here today do is only going to be a helpful thing. It's amazing how many lawyers get quite bogged down when it comes to suddenly the nitty gritty of share capital and finance and corporate finance. So I think having that sort of some fluency in that will only help. It's not the be all and end all at all, and you'll learn an awful lot once you actually start in the role. But I think I would say it's a bonus for quite a lot of the work we do.
Yeah, completely agree with that, Ed. A real bonus. You look at the major practice areas that the three firms that are on the call today, that are represented on the call today, practice in, which is invariably corporate M&A and ECM work. You've got banking and finance work, regulatory, and a lot of the regulatory work that the firms do is financial regulatory. And then even disputes. A lot of the disputes work that the major law firms in Hong Kong do have a financial element to them. So having a finance background is going to hold you in good stead in all of those key practice areas.
Amazing, thanks, Ed and Will. We might move on because there's still quite a few questions to go, and I'm keen to get through as many as possible. So again, please feel free to keep on sharing them. So hopefully that helps you there, Tommy. So Adam asks, and I think this is a really good question. It comes up quite a lot. So Adam asks, can the university that I'm attending either limit or broaden the opportunities that are on offer, especially internationally? Anyone wants to tackle that? Yeah.
From an A&O perspective, your university should not limit you. I think, and I'm sure I'm speaking for the other firms as well, we're looking for diversity from students. So I think it's really important that, and I know someone else touched on this earlier, which is you really need to know why you want to work in Hong Kong and why you want to work for a commercial law firm. Your background should not limit you. You should be able to explain in terms of your background what you're bringing to us as a law firm.
Amazing, thanks, Nishila. Any other thoughts on that front?
Same here. This is Priscilla from Freshfields. Same here. We welcome applicants from all different backgrounds, so regardless of which university that you come from, and we're definitely always very keen to have Aussie law students applying to us every year. So we're looking forward to receiving your application.
I think for us, university is the best time for you to kind of pick subjects that you're interested in and you'll perform better in. What you learn at law school and what actually happens at the law firm is wildly different. So just enjoy your time at school and do your best and take subjects that you're most interested in. You'll learn what you need to do as a lawyer during your training contract.
Thanks, Helen. So another question from another Adam. So this is Adam Chen. Thanks for popping in your question here, Adam. He asks, hi panelists, it would be great if you can share your stories of what made you or convinced you to become a lawyer. So this comes into the why question that a couple of you spoken about. So what made you become lawyers in the first place? Donovan, if I could throw to you first.
Ken, I don't have a particularly inspiring story, unfortunately, but I'll tell you the truth because that's the kind of person I am. I was going to be a vet. I was going to study science, maths. I hated law. I didn't want to do it. I went on a work experience just before we had to decide to firm up the university selection. And I realised I hated being a vet even more than I thought. And I thought, what am I going to go do now? I may as well go and become a lawyer. And that was more than 20 years ago. So you never know. You never know. Thankfully, when I actually got going and got into it, I really loved it.
Completely different ends of the spectrum there. That's awesome. Will, what about you?
Well, I had some family inspiration. My grandfather was a federal court judge. He was the head of the federal court, actually, in Australia. And he was quite influential on me at a young age. We also had a lot of family and friends who were solicitors or barristers. So I kind of grew up with quite a few lawyers, I guess, and it was always on my radar. And I did legal studies at a school level, year 11, year 12 at school, and found it incredibly interesting. So for me, it was a clear number one career choice.
From my perspective, I was probably a bit the opposite to Will, actually. I grew up on a farm and no one had ever been anywhere near the City of London, let alone being a lawyer. So I was definitely a bit of a black sheep of the family for a while. So I went and did a law degree at university. I can't really think now at the time why that appealed. Perhaps I felt I quite enjoyed language and some of the nuances of language, and the law degree might play to some of that. So I did my law degree. If I'm absolutely honest, I sort of laboured my way rather through my law degree, my undergraduate law degree, and got something out of it, but it didn't fill me with inspiration. But I persevered, and then as soon as I got into actual commercial practice, and I turned up, I can remember it quite vividly, walking through Freshfields offices door on Fleet Street in London on the first day as a trainee. I just loved it ever since, and really haven't looked back. I sort of just enjoyed the work, the people, the kind of culture and the buzz, and was hooked right from the outset. So yeah, I think it just goes to show people people change, and you'll probably ebb and flow a bit as to what really piques your interest. So what you like now won't necessarily be. You may feel differently about that in years to come, but that's how it came about for me. Amazing. Thanks for sharing, Ed, and all of you. It's so good to hear so many different varied paths and stories into how you became lawyers. It's awesome. Another question, this has come up a couple of times, so I might tackle this one next. So James asks, what are the academic requirements that the law firms are looking for? Who would like to tackle that one first? Maybe one of the grad recruiters are on the call. Nishila?
Sure. So we're looking for an equivalent of a 2-1. We do also look at other things. So we're not just looking at your academics. So as Helen said, it's great if you do subjects that A, you're good at, and B, that you like. We're also looking at, I guess, other things. So I don't know about the other firms, but with A&O, we do ask people to complete an online application form. So we are also looking at, your responses to those questions. That's also important because that tells us why you want to work for us and what you're bringing to us as a person.
Amazing. Priscilla? Yep.
Yeah, same here. So we are looking for a 2-1 equivalent, which I believe is around distinction in the Aussie language. So again, our application start with an online application form where we will look at your grades and also why you are interested in becoming a lawyer, and also we will look at your language skills, etc. But I think apart from just the academic, I think it's really a lot is about your passion in law, why Hong Kong, all these other elements, and also your personality are stuff that we look at. So it's not just purely looking at academics.
Amazing. Helen, is that similar for KWM?
Yeah, I think in Aussie terms, besides distinction, I think you look at the WAM is around 70, I think is what we look at. And that also is what's the baseline for you to get into the PCLL school, which again is very important if you're looking to start your career in Hong Kong through the Hong Kong training track. You do need to do the PCLL.
Awesome, thanks for sharing.
I'll just add to that, Grant, if I may. I think we should also just, so the academics are important, but frankly, once over a sort of baseline, if you are in that kind of 2-1 equivalent or category, it's rarely that makes people stand out. And I think you have to remember that all of these, all of the firms that are represented here today look at hundreds and hundreds of applications, and so just thinking about who you really are and not being afraid to express who you are and what makes you a good individual, I would absolutely encourage that, because it does tend to make your application stand out from the crowd. There's lots of very impressive students and candidates that apply for these jobs, so don't be afraid to show a bit of uniqueness and a bit of who you really are. It tends to come across well, even though you may think that you need to try and conform to some sort of perceived corporate standard. I would encourage you not to do that and to be yourself. Yeah,
great tip. Thanks, Ed. I can see we've just ticked over past, but maybe if we just do or squeeze in one more quick question, because I think it's a good one. This comes from Anonymous, but nonetheless, if I can finish my PCLL conversion exam in advance, would it be a merit for my interview? Helen or one of the partners, do you want to tackle that?
Doesn't matter for us. Yeah, it's always good to have your qualification, but at the end of the day, we're looking for Hong Kong qualified to become Hong Kong qualified.
Amazing.
Yeah, on the Freshfields, same. It doesn't, whether you finish your conversion exam in advance is not a requirement for us. It's not something we look at, but it's always good to know that you are planning in advance and looking at your qualification work is always showing some commitment, I guess.
And we're the same as both Priscilla and Helen.
Amazing. Well, thank you all. Let's maybe tie things up there, but a big thank you to the panel. I know that you're all extremely busy, so thank you for taking 10 minutes out of your day to share with a really strong audience. I'm sure that the students got a lot from this session.